Good morning, grade 9s. Today we're looking at what misrelated participles are. This grammatical error is often known as a dangling participle or even a dangling modifier. So don't be confused by the different terminology. Before we begin, make sure that you have a pen and your English book ready to take down notes, and then pause as we carry on so that you give yourself an opportunity to take down notes. Let's begin. So what is a participle? A participle is a verb that can be used as an adjective. So the verb is modified, it changes to become an adjective to describe a noun. There are two kinds of participles that you need to know, present and past participles. The present participles end in ing. Let's have a look at this example. The smiling graduate threw his cap in the air. Now the words smiling and threw on its own are verbs. However, here, if we look at the word smiling, it is seen as an adjective. It's taken from the verb smile, which then modifies the noun graduate. So threw is a verb. I could say the graduate threw his cap in the air. So the word smiling describes the graduate. Let's look at this example. The reminiscing boy sat there for an hour. The word reminiscing, ending in ing, is taken from the verb reminisce, which then modifies the noun boy. The verb sat. So the reminiscing boy sat there for an hour. Once again, the verb becomes an adjective describing the boy, the noun. Your past participles usually end in D or ED. However, there are always some exceptions. Consider break, broke, broken. Let's have a look at this example. For dinner, we had grilled steak and mashed potatoes, both ending in ED. The word grilled is taken from the verb grill, and this then modifies the noun steak. The word mashed, taken from the verb mash, modifies the noun potatoes. So once again, I could say for dinner, we had steak and potatoes. The words grilled and mashed are adjectives describing the nouns steak and potatoes. Because participles are adjectives, they modify a noun or pronoun in the sentence. A participle that is in the sentence but that does not modify a noun or pronoun in the sentence is called a dangling participle. And this is a grammatical error. A dangling participle often will occur at the beginning of a sentence. The sentence begins with a participle phrase, but then the subject of the sentence is not what the phrase is about. Remember that a participle must modify a word or words in the sentence. Let's have a look at this video explaining it in a bit more detail.
Participle. Participle is an ing or ed form of a verb, and it acts as an adjective. Here is an example.
The baby, tired from a long day of play, cried without end.
What is the action or predicate in this sentence? It's cried. The baby cried. Tired from a long day of play is a participle phrase that is describing the baby. Since we're talking about participles, now is a great time to mention the infamous dangling participle. A dangling participle is when you start a sentence with a participle that does not refer to the subject. Participles don't always have to refer to the subject, but when you start a sentence with one, they do. So avoid using dangling participles. They will create glaring errors in meaning. Here's an example of a dangling participle.
Steaming from the heat, the baseball player carefully sipped his hot cocoa.
Take a second and think about what this sentence is actually saying. Well, it's clear that the speaker meant to describe the hot cocoa, to say that the hot cocoa was steaming from heat, and that the baseball player carefully sipped it. But the way that this sentence is arranged, the participle describes the subject, in this case, the baseball player. So steaming from the heat is describing the baseball player. This sentence is saying that the baseball player was steaming from the heat, not the hot cocoa. So watch out for these. Beginning a sentence with a participle is a great way to add some description in your writing, So just remember, when you start a sentence with a participle phrase, it has to apply to the subject.
Let's have a look at this video by the Khan Academy.
Hello, grammarians. Hello, Rosie. Hi, Paige. So in this video, we're going to talk about something called a dangling modifier. So before we get into what a dangling modifier is, we can sort of talk about just what a modifier is. Rosie, do you want to tell us what the definition of a modifier is?
Sure. So, well, one major modifier that you think of is an adjective. So a lot of times a modifier is describing something else in the sentence.
Right, okay. So it can be an adjective or
An
like
adverb.
a phrase, or yeah, an adverb too. So a modifier is always supposed to come right before the word or phrase that it's modifying. But when it doesn't do that, that's what's called a dangling modifier. So this can look something like,
Flashing lightning and thunder, the little bunny struggled through the storm.
so this sentence has a dangling modifier, and the modifier in question is flashing lightning and thunder. So the phrase that this comes right before is the little bunny. And flashing lightning and thunder is not describing the little bunny, right? I don't think I've ever seen a bunny with like lightning coming out of it or anything. Rosie, what is this modifier actually supposed to be modifying?
So the modifier is actually supposed to be modifying the storm, because we've got lightning and thunder, flashing, all of those things describe the storm.
Right, okay. So we're really not supposed to have a dangling modifier like this, so we need to fix this sentence.
Flashing lightning and thunder, the storm raged as the bunny struggled.
So this is all better. The modifier flashing lightning and thunder comes right before the storm now.
Right.
So this makes more sense. We got rid of the dangling modifier. It's not, hanging out looking like it's modifying the wrong noun.
So if you're doing editing or you're looking at a sentence, when you take a look at a sentence, see if you can spot what it is that modifier is supposed to be describing, and then just make sure that that noun or phrase comes right after the modifier.
Right, like in this example, we had to pretty much completely rewrite the sentence. It still gets across the same idea, but we had to put the nouns in a different order so the modifier wasn't dangling anymore.
Running around on his little hamster wheel, Albert watched his pet exercise.
This whole part, running around on his little hamster wheel, is the modifier in this sentence, but what comes right after it is Albert, which I don't think he's the one running around on a little hamster wheel, right? So this is something you want to look out for and maybe rewrite your sentence so that doesn't happen.
Right, and we have a clue that Albert is not the name of the hamster or the pet, because it says Albert watched his pet exercise. So we have a good clue that Albert is probably a human, and he's probably not running on hamster wheels.
Right.
So he shouldn't be coming right after that modifier.
Yeah, exactly.
Running around on his little hamster wheel, the critter exercised while Albert watched.
Right, so this is how we made our change. We still have running around on his little hamster wheel at the beginning, but then we sort of switched around the order of Albert and his pet. So now we have the critter following the modifier that it's supposed to be modified by.
Right.
Yeah, so like that is dangling modifiers and how you get rid of them. They're words or phrases that describe another word or phrase, and when they're dangling, they're like in the wrong place. They're in front of the wrong noun.
So when you have a modifier at the beginning of your sentence and it's set off with a comma, like all of these are, that's when you have to pay attention and make sure that the noun or a phrase coming right after the modifier is matched up with the modifier so that it's describing the right thing.
Right, you can get some crazy meanings out of your sentences otherwise, like the bunny with lightning. So that's dangling modifiers. You can learn anything. Page out.
Rosie out.
Okay, let's have a look at a few more examples. Here, speeding through the tunnel, the station came into view. Now the station was not speeding through the tunnel. What was speeding? Nowhere do we see a train. To correct this, you would say speeding through the tunnel, the train approached the station. So in an exam or test, you'll be asked to identify and correct this error. You'd have to add on so that the sentence then makes sense. Here, the train was added. Broken into pieces, I swept up the glass. So what was broken into pieces? The person was not broken into pieces. How would you then correct the sentence so that it makes meaning? I swept up the cup, now broken into pieces. Do you see that you have to work with the sentence quite a bit? Forgetting all about class, the weather was perfect at the beach. The weather did not forget about the class. Who did then? So your correction could be, forgetting all about class, the friends enjoyed the perfect weather at the beach. You'll need to have a look at the passage where the error will be in to take meaning and context from, and then obviously to correct your sentence correctly. Correct the following. You might want to pause the video here to take down notes. Making my bed, the stuffed animals were on the floor. Now the animals are not making the bed, so who is? Petting his head, my dog enjoyed my company. The dog is certainly not petting his own head, so who is then? Wishing for a pony, the farm was a magical place for me. Once again, the farm is not wishing for a pony. Therefore, who is making the wish? Pause the video now and see if you can correct these three examples. So, walking through the woods, the trees were magnificent. The trees are not walking. Freezing our hands off, the snow was fun to play in. The snow is not freezing its hands off. So who is? And reading quickly, the book was too exciting to put down. The book is not reading quickly. Once again, pause the video to correct these three examples. So hopefully you have taken down notes during this lesson. In tomorrow's lesson, we'll then work on a few more examples where you can practice your new skill. Once again, grade 9s, reach out to your teachers. We want to hear from you. If you're stuck with any of the work, let us know that we can help. But remember, stay on top of the work each day and don't ignore your lessons.